All right, welcome to the Uncolored thing here. Kevin Metcalf, and we're going to continue going over Dr. Rasmussen's excellent book, How Reason Can Lead to God. Dr. Joshua Rasmussen, pictured here in his most rugged. I gotta get a guy to do a picture of me like that. That's fantastic. But Joshua Rasmussen is one of my favorite philosophers because he takes on philosophy not as if it's some sort of an abstract academic thing. He takes it on as if it's a real thing, that it applies to life and it applies to the world. And even as he's talking about it, you can see him accessing his own mind and his own, I don't know, inner self. It sounds weird what I'm saying. I'm not even sure if I'm saying it correctly. But again, I love the way he does philosophy. And he's able to take these very, very complex ideas and simplify them so even a knucklehead like me can understand, because I live in a simple world. So this book was one of the first ones that I'd ever picked up. Not really one of the first ones, but one of the first ones that really helped get me into understanding these ideas. And a lot of his stuff is fantastic. As again, he's got a website that he's redone called joshualrasmussen.com. You ought to go to that and interact with some of his ideas. He's also got, again, books, but he has a YouTube channel called Worldview Design, where he talks about these ideas and explains them and does other kind of stuff. Again, if you're interested in this kind of stuff, it's a must. You can't miss it. Can't miss it. You ought to take a look at it. That's what I would suggest. That's my endorsement. So let's get to his book. The last time we finished, we talked about this idea of the blob of everything and what explains it. So if you take everything that exists and look at it as just this blob, then the question arises, what explains this blob? Why did it come into existence? What's the point of it, and why is it even here? And so here's a summary of the last chapter before you get into the next chapter. It says, this chapter introduces the bridge of reason. To take the first step onto the bridge, we got to see that something exists, and it could be anything. You, your thoughts, your doubts. If you agree that something exists, then you've taken the first step onto the bridge. And that's what's fabulous about Dr. Rasmussen, is that this book in particular, as I said before, he writes it so that everybody can have access to the ideas. It's not something that, well, if you believe this kind of a thing, or if you come from this kind of a worldview, if you were born here, whatever, really doesn't matter. It has a very universal appeal, the way he works out his ideas. He's also going to talk about this thing called the bridge of reason. The importance of the bridge of reason, in my estimation, is this. Anytime you have an idea, there have to be reasons that you should believe it. And if there are not reasons that support this idea, like the bridge of reason, then it makes it questionable as to whether or not you should even adhere to that particular idea. This is the idea, or to me, this is central, really, to any worldview. If you're going to assert something is true, there should be objective reasons why they're true, so that anybody can have access to them. And that's what he's talking about here with the bridge of reason. I was going to get onto a little jaunt there, but I caught myself. So then he summarizes the last chapter by saying the next step is to see the puzzle. The puzzle is about existence in total, reading Dr. Rasmussen. By reason, we can see that nothing exists outside of all existence. It follows by reason that our total reality has no cause or explanation outside of it. This result is puzzling. How can any reality of any size lack an outside cause or outside explanation? So again, he sets up, or summarizes the last chapter. You got this blob of everything. It seems to exist without having a reason outside of itself for its existence, like everything else. And so in this next chapter, he's going to expound on that and set up these two new, really cool ideas. The idea of dependence and independence, or self-sufficiency, as he calls it here. And it's the idea that everything that exists anything that you look around in your room, wherever you are right now, if you take a look, whatever you're looking at depends on something else for its existence. Whether it's trees, the chairs, your hair, lack thereof, whatever it is, there's something else that accounts, or at least explains its existence the way it exists at that moment. But the weird puzzle is that this blob of everything doesn't have anything outside of it like that would explain its existence. And that's the puzzle that he's going to get into. And it's the idea, again, he introduces of dependence and independence. I said that like it was cool. Chapter 3. So we're going to get into chapter 3. And so he begins with, consider the puzzle again. We observe by reason that the reality as a whole is a blob of everything. It includes everything. Therefore, nothing exists beyond the total blob, and nothing beyond the total blob of everything could have caused or explained its existence. In this sense, our reality is self-sufficient, i.e., it has no outside cause or explanation. Strange, how can anything of any size, shape, or number be self-sufficient? That's the puzzle. So at this point, and this is the thing that I started to allude to, we need to start building supports for our bridge of reason. And I'm going to install 3 support beams that provide a foundation for solving the puzzle of existence. These beams will also provide a foundation for our entire pathway to come. I just want to stop there for a second. So like I said, the whole idea behind this podcast, I guess it is. I don't know. Maybe it is. The idea is that people are going to be telling you stuff from all quarters. News, TV, friends, family, doesn't matter. People are going to be sending you messages. And the idea behind these messages is that they're true, or that you should believe them, or at least somehow adopt them into your worldview. Okay. What I'm suggesting is that's not the best idea. The best idea is whatever someone is telling you is to run it through a gauntlet of logic and reason. Dr. Rasmussen has alluded to it already a couple of times where he says, by reason, we understand X, Y, and Z, right? By reason, we see that nothing outside of the blob explains the blob itself. That's a very mindful allusion or use of that word reason, because that's literally the boundaries. Like I said last time in the last podcast, logic and reason, in my opinion, seem to be the boundaries of what is in play and what's not in play. Like if you were on a sports field playing football, basketball, whatever sport you have, there are these lines at the edge of the field. Anything that happens outside that line, we're not going to deal with. It's a foul, it's out of play, we're going to stop it, and we're going to come back and start it over again. Same thing that happens when you're talking about an idea, somebody's giving you an idea, you need to run it through this gauntlet of logic, which are the boundaries by which, in my opinion, you should determine, I'm gonna take that on and give it more consideration. Or, sorry, that's just logically impossible or just contradictory, and that's out of bounds. We're gonna leave that alone. I'm not gonna chase that idea down. And that's what he's talking about here. So what he's gonna do is he's gonna use this reason to build support for this idea that he's brought up. And our challenge, or, you know, as a reader, my challenge is I got to test these ideas. I got to see if these support beams actually do support his idea. That's my responsibility. Just because I love Josh Rasmussen as a philosopher, I just can't read it and say it's true. I still have to run his ideas through my gauntlet of logic, such as it is. It's not great, but it works pretty good. So here briefly, where am I? Oh, here we go. Okay. All right, here we go. Okay, here briefly is the schematic for the solution I will develop. So he's going to give you the sort of the plan for what he's going to do. He says the world includes a foundation, a ground layer. The foundation of existence is like the foundation of a bridge. Just as a bridge cannot stand without a foundation, similarly, reasoning as a whole cannot stand in existence without some foundation that stands on its own. The foundational layer, in other words, provides the ultimate basis for the existence of everything else. The foundation of things enables there to be enables there to be things as opposed to there being nothing at all. Call this account of existence the foundation theory. Now, that's a lot, and I don't want to go too much further in that, because there are a couple of ideas that I don't want to say learned, but was introduced to. Learning is a long ways from me learning any of this stuff. But this foundational theory. So when somebody says something is this way, what they call it in philosophy, they call it a knowledge claim. You say, I know this. This is the way it is. It's a knowledge claim. Then there has to be some justification for that. And so there are these, please don't get the idea that I understand this stuff. Always check with a credible source. But I think this is right. There are different ways to understand truth or knowledge. It's an epistemological thing. And one of the ideas is they call it foundationalism. And it's the idea that when you're looking at the reasons why something is, it bottoms out at this bottom level at which there can be no other explanation for. It deals with this, what they call a vicious infinite regress. And the idea behind the infinite regress is that if you say that this exists because of this, and this exists because of that, and on ad infinitum, then the problem is if it goes on infinitely, then you actually never have an explanation for the first thing that you tried to explain. You just have this infinite regress of things that never ends in an explanation that holds up everything. That's kind of the idea behind foundationalism, I think. Again, check with a credible source. But there's another theory. I think there's another one. There's actually three, and maybe we'll do this next time. But there's another one called correspondence. That's it. There's a correspondence theory of knowledge, I guess it is. And that idea is more like, instead of explaining things based on a foundation that you start from, this idea says that everything is based on the things that explain it. So it's almost like a network or a spider web, where all of these things are connected to each other, and the strength of one idea is dependent on how it connects to all these other ideas. And so you've got this web of ideas, and if they kind of hold up pretty well, then you've got this web explanation. But it almost exists in a vacuum where there's no real foundation for any of these ideas, I think, is what the problem is. But it's way more complex than I understand. I'm simply pointing out that there are some people that will deny this idea of foundationalism, that there can be a bottom level of explanation for things, which I think is what Dr. Rasmussen says. Now, I tend to agree with the foundationalist way of thinking because, well, one, because there seems to be no justification. It seems like the correspondence theory can lead to relativism. In other words, if you can get enough ideas that kind of work together, then they kind of exist within their own little ecosystem, even though it may be totally detached from reality, is the problem. And it seems to me that there has to be something that roots ideas to an objective reality. Otherwise, there seems to be, you devolve into something where there's no such thing as truth, which is postmodernism, which nobody believes because it's stupid. So I tend to be a foundationalist, I think, if I understand it properly. And that's really what he's going with here. The idea that there are some ideas that are so basic, like 2 + 2 is 4. That would be a foundational belief, I think. And I think the reason what makes it foundational is that there seems to be no other possible answer that you could get. If you add 2 things together, you get 4 things. And that's what makes it the bottom level belief, I think, is because there just seems to be no other possible answer to that question. Of course, all that I just said could be wrong. So the foundational theory is important. And what he's going to now begin to talk about is this idea that There are things that are dependent on other things. And then there has to be something, if everything else is dependent, there has to be something that doesn't have that quality of being dependent. It has to have an independent quality, an independent nature. Otherwise, there's no foundation for all of the other things to exist upon. It becomes kind of a weird impossibility, I guess it is. But again, that's a lot of stuff for there, and I only read just a couple of paragraphs. As I went further into it, I thought, let me just stop there because there's a lot of great ideas, and I don't want to get too far. Well, let me just do this one. Let's go to the end of this one. I'll do it anyway. So the foundational create. Well, we'll go to the next one. Right here in the second to the bottom paragraph, he says the foundation theory requires development. How does a foundation itself exist? If we say that reality is self-sufficient in virtue of having a self-sufficient foundation, again, it's an idea that I think we'll later get into called necessary existence, that it has to exist without anything depending on it. Maybe I'm revealing too much right now. But he continues on. If we say that reality is self-sufficient in virtue of having a self-sufficient foundation, we've pushed back the mystery. How does the foundation manage to be self-sufficient? Again, you're going into this infinite regress problem. What explains the foundation? If nothing, how is that possible? Okay, so then he goes on. In the next page, it says, a Harvard philosopher puts it, to see how in principle a whole realm could fundamentally be explained greatly increases our understanding of the realm. In other words, if you understand the foundation of something, it helps you understand the things based on that particular foundation. So the first beam of independence is the self-sufficient idea. We'll end with this. The whole of reality is self-sufficient with nothing outside to cause or explain its existence. If self-sufficiency is a locked door, then the key to unlock it is what's called independence. Here's what I mean. In order for any realm of any size to be self-sufficient, that realm must contain something independent or some independent layer or component. Okay, that's the bottom line. If you're going to have anything, there has to be something in that anything that doesn't depend on something else to exist. That's his idea. So we're going to tear it apart. He's going to help us tear it apart. But another book that really helped open my eyes on this was, and I don't have a picture of it. I guess I'll see if I can put it in on post, is a Dr. Edward Fazer. Well, I'll tell you what, man, Dr. Edward Fazer is a thinker and a half. That guy's got a mind on him. But he wrote this book called 5 Proofs for the Existence of God. And here's another guy who went from atheism to theism based on these ideas from people like Augustine and Saint Augustine. Was it Saint Augustine? Maybe not. Thomas Aquinas. And who's the other guy? There's another guy, big philosopher. Anyway, Dr. Fazer does a fantastic idea of drawing out these ideas of necessary existence, dependence, and independence with regard to existence. Fantastic book if you want something else to help you, to go along with reading this one. That's how I did it. So we're going to end right there. And next week, we'll start off talking about this idea of self-sufficiency. And I think what I'll probably include in here at the end is a video that I saw with some kid talking about what he's talking about in his video is it's talking about the causal principle, but it's the same kind of idea of one thing getting its existence or characteristics or properties from another thing. And if that other thing doesn't exist, then it's difficult to explain how this particular thing got its properties. And it challenges the idea that there's some sort of an infinite regress of things or events. And that's really what this is kind of about, this self-sufficiency gets into. Wow, I'm bored with myself. So I'm gonna stop right there. We're gonna get into the Uncolored Sports segment. Again, something that I didn't necessarily want to get into. Let me see if I can get this thing going. Otherwise, I'll have to take a quick break and get it working here. So let me set it up. I watch on occasion when I do watch any sports stuff. There's a couple of channels that I'll listen to, and there's one YouTube channel that I listen to. It's Outkick 360, and this is why ESPN has ruined sports with the woke BS. All of these social justice sports leagues and corporations has ruined sports for me. I was a guy who would listen to ESPN. It would be on all day, every day, 24/7 back in the day. Then it turned into some, racist organization. Everything's race, or whatever. So now I just have a couple of things that I watch. And now Kick 360 I pick is because the guys on there, Chad Withrow, Jonathan Hutton, and Paul Koharski. They seem to be reasonable guys. Even Paul, who gets on my nerves sometimes. Not on my nerves, but he can't stop talking over people. He's got this old school kind of New York lib attitude. But he's as reasonable as anybody that I've ever met. Very reasonable, very honest kind of guy. And that's what I like about them. They tend to be very honest and reasoned in their opinions and things. So I can listen to that. Not dogmatic, generally speaking. And so they're talking about something in baseball, which, who cares, baseball? But what caught me is that there was some argument between two baseball players, and one of them, it turned into a racial thing, somehow. One guy said something about Jackie Robinson. I'll let you hear it for yourself. So it goes on for about a couple of minutes. But I heard Chad Withrow say something that almost made me fall out of my chair because it was such a dumb idea. And Chad's not a dumb guy. He's super smart. And again, tends to be very, very reasonable. So when he said this, it kind of blew me away. So let me see if I can get this going and you can hear it for yourself. Craziness.
I don't know what Donaldson meant and if there was something bad in his heart about it or not, but I don't know how you judge that and determine it.
Well, I mean,
right.
It's
a stupid thing to say. We know that.
The reality of it is it's however Tim Anderson wanted to handle it. If Tim Anderson takes it as racist, it's racist.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no other way around it. I don't think Josh Donaldson's a racist. I don't think he was intending it to be a racial comment. He was giving the guy hell because he said he sees himself as the modern-day Jackie Robinson in a 2019 interview.
Right, and he thinks that's
and they have a history. So
and that has been a joke with him in the past, according to Donaldson.
According to Donaldson, he's used it before, but this has been building up since 2019 where they've had some back and forth in games. So it's poor judgment on Donaldson's part because if it's someone, even if you have a friendly rivalry with an opponent and you can give each other hell and there can be back and forth, you can get away with it. But if Tim Anderson legitimately hates you and you get, you're over there, he's at third and you're calling him Jackie and he wants to take it or sees it as racist, it's racist. So he's not going to win. I mean, I just take your 1-game suspension and move on. And again, I'm not accusing Josh Donaldson of racism, but what I'm saying is you don't like each other, clearly. He took it as a racial thing. Then it's going to be deemed racist. Josh Donaldson cannot win in this.
No.
Regardless of who's right or who's wrong. And again, I everything I've heard about both of these guys and what Donaldson's explanation was, I don't think he intended it to be racist. But if you take a joke too far and you say something that could be taken that way to the wrong person, they are going to take it a certain way. And if they report on you or say that, it's racist.
You lose. But what's it hurt for him to appeal it? He's on the COVID list.
Okay, that's the idea. That's the thing we're going to talk about. So if the guy, I don't know what the guy's name is, of course, because it's baseball. What Chad says is, if this guy says it's racist, then it's racist. Is that true? Is racism determined by some person's feelings? Or is it something else that's an objective thing? That's the question. And it's not just racism, it's really anything. Anything that somebody finds offensive. Is it offensive because somebody thinks it's offensive? Or there's something objective that we can go by to go, well, actually, you might be offended by it, but nobody should care. And I'll give you an example. Because this is a very popular idea among a certain group of people today. Okay? There's a lot of idiots who own corporations. They're probably your boss someplace who are susceptible to this crazy idea. And it's a dumb and dangerous idea. It's running with scissors dumb. It's dangerous to all of society if this is what's going on, or if we're going to say that this is okay. Now, and I want to make it clear, I don't know that Chad Withrow is saying that this is the way it should be, or that he advocates this. He didn't make it clear, because that's what I thought at first. But as I listened to it again, I'm holding out the possibility that what he's saying is that this is how it's going to be handled by Major League Baseball, in which case Major League Baseball is the idiot. If this is the tack that they're going to take. That because somebody calls something racist or sexist or whatever it is, that's what makes it the thing. Okay, why is that a problem? Because it takes reality and turns it into a subjective thing rather than an objective thing. And if it is true that somebody being offended by something makes it whatever the offense should be, then we have this crazy world where if anything happens. Now, here's why I tell you nobody believes that. Okay. When I walk by somebody's house or somebody's wearing a shirt, especially if it's a white folk, somebody white, and they're wearing one of these Black Lives Matters shirts or whatever it is, that's offensive to me. Because in my opinion, Black Lives Matter is the worst organization for Black people and the country. That's my opinion. And when I see white folks wearing that shirt, it offends me. Now, do you think anybody's going to go make them take it off? Of course not. Because the idea that if somebody thinks something offensive, therefore it's wrong, is a lie. It only works if you have a certain ideology, if you're in a certain camp. Then you somehow are able to tell everybody else in the country what they can say, what they can't say, what they can think, what they can't think, what they can like and what they cannot like. And this idea that if I'm Black and I don't like the circumstance that I'm in and I'm going to call racism because we've trained white folks in the society to back off because they don't want to be called racist. It's like what is that stuff you put on the vampires? It's like that I don't know what you call it, but it's like the cross to a vampire, calling a white dude a racist. And so if a Black person just says racism, they know that white folks are going to back off. I've probably mentioned before when I was back at the PD, some sergeant didn't get a job, some Black sergeant didn't get a job, and he wrote an article, racism, racism, racism. And I knew the sergeant, nicest guy in the world, and I mean that. But I was not surprised that he didn't get the job because he's not that smart. At least not in my estimation. Not when I worked with him. Nicest guy in the world. But when he didn't get the job, didn't surprise me. But when you cry racism, white folks lay down. Give you what you want. Partly because they don't respect you. Partly because they don't think you're, how should I say? They don't think you're on the level that they are. Because they don't need to do that. The point I'm making is that if we make our reality conform to the minds of a few people who think that skin color determines everything, it's a dangerous idea for the whole country. Or that something's sexist because they don't like it. Or I'm offended by anything, so now I can shut you down, turn you off. And it's so funny because when I was in high school, I heard this thing about the Salem witch burnings. I thought that's insane. Why would people burn somebody because what are they doing? Weird, making rat soup. I don't know what they were doing, but we got to burn you because you're different from us. It's the same idea. Don't like what you think, don't like what you're about, don't like your ideas, I got to punish you. And that's the dumb idea that Chad Withrow's talking about. And again, I don't know if he's advocating for it or just simply stating that that's the way things are going to be. Either way, it's a terribly dangerous idea. I had a buddy of mine, and again, nicest guy, but he's unfortunately, not really for him, because again, we still hang out, but he's your typical guilty white, liberal, rich guy from the Bay Area. And every time I thought, hey, Kev, man, I'm telling you how much I hate racism, boy, I hate racism. That's his thing, because he wants to let everybody know he's an ally. Fine, whatever. But we're at some event, out there at work, and he comes up to me and goes, man, this woman had a pin from that was like an SS pin from the Third Reich. It's a motorcycle thing, and so there's a lot of these things going around. A lot of people have, the helmets on from that time. And he goes, I was so offended, and I was going to tell her to leave, but I decided not to. And I asked him, I said, what makes you think that she should care that you're offended? Why would she care that you don't like something, or that it makes you feel bad, or you think it's bad? Why should she care? In other words, he goes on to talk about how horrible Auschwitz was, listen, I don't know anybody who denies that, but I'm not sure how her wearing a pin, why would that make you want to punish her for that? Because she wasn't there at Auschwitz. She may not even understand the significance of it. And if it's not something that she intends to represent the horrors of Auschwitz, maybe it's just a fashion thing, just like the helmets that a lot of guys wear from those old Sergeant Schultz helmets. Just the fashion thing. Why would you get upset by that? So he asked me. He goes, well, what about the rebel flag? Doesn't that upset you that people wear the rebel flag? And thankfully, my dad spoke to me about this when I was a young kid. Well, not young kid, I was in my 20s. But he basically said is, if you're not, the idea is this. If somebody wearing a rebel flag suddenly changed my life somehow, then yeah, I'd be upset. If somebody was wearing a rebel flag t-shirt and I come home and my wife says, I don't love you anymore, I'm leaving you. I'm like, what's going on? That guy was wearing a rebel flag t-shirt. I'd have a problem with the rebel flag. Right? If I tried to get a job and you go, nope, I'm sorry, that guy was wearing a rebel flag, so you can't have a job, I would be upset about the rebel flag. Or maybe I'd question the sanity of my wife or the guy who's the employer. But either way, if none of those things are occurring, why would I care that somebody's wearing that rebel flag? Even if they believed whatever the rebel flag was supposed to represent. In other words, if it's not affecting me, what do I care what they believe? Why does everybody have to believe and understand the world the way you think they should? Otherwise, you're going to punish them. That's this idea. That's how stupid it is. Here's a couple of other examples. You remember this kid? Back in the day, this is not that long ago. Remember this kid, James Damore? Right, working at Google. Google's like, hey, we want to find out how do you get more women to work here, all right? I mean, apparently the job opening in the newspaper wasn't enough. I mean, you figure if there's openings and women aren't applying, okay, that's what do you want? They could apply if they want to. Why is it your fault that you go, this is the job that's open and whoever wants to apply can apply, and you're not getting a lot of women applying? Why is that your fault? Or your problem? But James Damore goes and says, hey, listen, I'm going to write a paper. He does his research and says, listen, women are different from men. Men like things, women like people, and women tend not to gravitate towards these kinds of jobs. Fired him. Because he was wrong? No. The science was almost exactly right. If you talk to people in that field, nobody had a problem with the strength of his arguments. But a certain group of people thought it was racist, sexist, misogynist, whatever term that they've made up in the past 20 years to call everybody. Guy gets fired. Punished because his ideas were different. That's Chad's idea. And again, I don't know if he's supporting it or just simply saying that's the way it is. I'm not sure. but it's a terrible, pernicious idea. Here's another one. Lindsay Shepard, right? About the same time. She's teaching in college, I guess, in where was it? Canada, maybe? I don't know. I should do my research. But she's teaching a class, shows a video of Dr. Jordan Peterson talking about, I don't know, the social justice woke idiots who run the college get wind of it and fire her. Just showed a 5-minute video. And she says, listen, I don't even agree with the guy. But I thought that my students should hear both sides of the issue. Novel idea. Are you kidding me? You mean you think that kids should hear views that oppose another view and they can make up their own minds? That's craziness. You should be fired, burned at the stake. That's the idea. Somebody thought it was offensive. We got to punish this guy. Doesn't matter if there was any intent. Doesn't matter if the thing that was said was even offensive. Doesn't matter. It's a crazy idea. And it's gone on through history. Burning people at the stake because you don't like their ideas. I'll give you one example. This might be a stretch. People might go, Kev, you're stretching. This is not the same thing. Jesus Christ. It's the same idea. Yeah, it might be a stretch. I'm simply talking about the idea. Just follow with me for a sec. Jesus is walking around where he was. Just, telling folks the real. Jews didn't like it. Why? Was he trying to take over? No. He was saying things that the Jews didn't like, so they said, crucify him. And Pontius Pilate, like MLB, they're like, listen, we don't know what the problem is. Why are you after the guy? Hey, he's saying things we don't like. Crucify him. Pontius is like, all right, whatever. That's what corporations do. They don't look at objective data. They don't look at the intent. It's just if you get a small, maddening crowd crying for somebody to be punished because of something that was said, corporations, right, bosses, companies, yeah, let's just get rid of them. It's a crazy idea. It is literally one of the dumbest ideas. Now, fortunately, God used that to save everyone. So I'm not mad about that last one because we needed that. But the point I'm making is the idea that Chad Withrow was either simply explaining that that's the way it's going to be handled or advocates, and I have a hard time thinking that he advocates something so ignorant and so stupid. It's still dangerous. That's why I'm going to give him the Running with Scissors Award. I'm not going to give it to Chad. I'm going to give it to Major League Baseball or Chad. If it's Chad's idea, he gets it. If it's Major League Baseball, then MLB gets it. It's the Running with Scissors Award for having such a stupid and pernicious, dangerous idea. As if somebody says it's this, that's what makes it this. It's a stupid idea. All right, that's enough of that. The argument against infinite regress, for those of you who would like to take a look at it, and I'll put a link in there in case you just want to look at that all, and you want to miss the rest of this and just look at that by itself. That's a worthwhile video to see. Next time we'll continue on with the book, but again, I would suggest you get Joshua Rasmussen's book. Where did it go? Joshua Rasmussen's book, How Reason Can Lead to God. And go to Dr. Rasmussen's website, joshualrasmussen.com, or his YouTube page, Worldview Design, and take a look at some of the stuff he's got there. Interact with us, send him an email, tell him how much you love it. Click, comment, all that stuff that you're supposed to do. And with this video, too, if you don't mind. I'd appreciate that. But again, my name's Kevin Metcalf. Thanks for tuning in. If you have any questions, comments, or the like, be sure to leave it in the comments below. I don't know if just leave it in the comments, that kind of thing. And that'll be it. Thanks a lot. And that's enough out of me today. All right, that's it.